What up, everybody? It's your girl Sherry's Joy, and welcome to Bookmarked. I'm your hostess, Sherry's Joy, and I read another book, Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. And this is a historical fiction. It was recommended to me. It is a wonderful book, and I highly, highly recommend it to you. The book takes place over the span of over like 250 years, or maybe 200 years. Between 200 and 250 years. So it is written by Yaa Gyasi. She is an author from Ghana who is now residing in Huntsville, Alabama. And she has written several books, and I can't wait to read more of her writing. You can always tell when I really like somebody's writing because I say that they're such a beautiful writer. And in my opinion, that is a thing, being a beautiful writer. To me, that means, in my opinion, your writing just flows, those pages, you keep wanting to turn those pages. You can visualize what the author, wants you to feel while you're reading the book. You're lost inside of the pages, and you sympathize and empathize with these characters. Sometimes you can find sometimes you find yourself in a character that you're reading. That to me is what a beautiful writer is. Not necessarily, a Pulitzer Prize winner, or you don't have to have an award or anything like that. I'm not saying that those aren't good things. Those are wonderful things, but you don't have to have that status for me to appreciate your writing. A good writer to me is a good writer. And this Yaa Gyasi is a brilliant, beautiful writer. So the book, we start off in Ghana in the 1700s, and we're in an African village, the Ashanti village. And I'm going to say, forgive me right now for, messing up any pronunciations of names and African tribes and cities and things of that nature. I don't know the language, so it is hard to figure out what the proper enunciation is, so just work with me. So we're in Ghana in the 1700s, and we're in an African village, and we have two sisters who don't know each other. One is older than the other, and one was actually, the mother was sexually attacked by another big man, they call it, which is the head warrior of the village. And that baby, is taken from her and sent to her first husband, and that wife, her husband and the first wife takes care of that baby. And then the other baby, Isai, she stays with the mother. Okay. So the mother has actually given each one this black stone, and the black stone is supposed to be for protection and luck and things like that. So each one has that stone. And we just get passed down from generations. It's so wonderful, and it's so informative. So what happens is Afia, who was actually taken away from the mother, she lives a life of, I don't want to say like rags to riches. We got rags over here, riches over here, because that's not what the story is about. But it's the best way I can kind of like explain it. So Afia, she lives with her father and her stepmother, and her father is like the head warrior, the big man of the village. And she is going to marry another young man in the village who is in line to be the next chief or the next big man. And she's actually, the villagers think that she's cursed because she hasn't matured yet. She hasn't started her cycle, which they are keeping her cycle a secret because the stepmother doesn't want her to, succeed or, be somebody that's on her level. So she manipulates her to keep it a secret that she's actually started. So what ends up happening is a British man comes over, and, it gets into like the slave trade, and this British man comes over, and he tours the village, and they make a deal for money. Like, if you take my daughter, you marry my daughter, we'll help you get, more slaves and things like that. So this tribe is raiding other villages to capture African tribes for the slave trade on the Gold Coast of Africa. And it doesn't talk about that per se, but it does mention that, and that is how the lineage starts. So, we have this one sister, the youngest sister. She marries the British man, and they live in what is called the Gold Castle, and that is real. That is a real castle where they kept the slaves there until it was time for them to um, be forced on the ship and be shipped to America. So what was actually happening, these tribes, they were helping the British with the slave trade. And then once the slave trade was banned, then we go more into America. And I know I sound confused, but it is a hard topic, and because it is historical fiction, and this actually happened, I'm not an expert, and I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm just talking about the book. So that's like the beginning of the book, right? So we got the one sister who lives through, that she marries the white man and has a child, and that child has a child, has a child, has a child. And by the time we get down to like the third generation, the son's name is James. And he is done. He is like, I don't want to have anything to do with the slave trade anymore. I'm going back to my grandmother's village, and I'm going to live my life that way. So he actually has, he basically fakes his own death in war battle. And he goes back to the village, and he lives his life as a villager, like the way he thinks that he's supposed to. Then the other sister, she actually gets captured. She gets captured, and she goes to that castle, and she's in the dungeon, and it talks about, like, you can just feel her emotion about how she's like piled in and stacked, like bodies stacked upon stacked upon stacked. And like, there's a women's dungeon and a men's dungeon where they keep them separated, and then they come in and they like examine them, and she's actually sexually attacked, and that is how she gets pregnant, and she is shipped off to America, where she has her child. And she's actually, they they are in that lineage goes from like Alabama to Baltimore. They talk about Fells Point, and it just goes down and down. So the American part is that one lineage, and then the African is the other lineage. And I don't want to spoil anything, but it's the book ended like how I thought it was going to, or how I hoped it would end. And I was so excited, but then I was like, "Ah, it's the end. This is the end of the book." And it's like, no, I didn't want the book to end. It was so good. It was so good. So I learned about Pratt City. Pratt City is a mining city where prisoners, they would take them to this coal mine, and they were like 650 feet deep in the ground and just digging and digging and digging, for coal. And, this is a real thing. And they were, miners, and they had to do this for their punishment and live out their full sentence. And a lot of tuberculosis came about. And then they were, when they were released, if they survived, if they lived, to tell the story, and they survived this punishment, this jail, they, developed all kinds of things like tuberculosis they would die from, black lungs, and just not being able to breathe and things like that. And then also they were like, not really hobos, but they had their own community, almost like a shanty town, but they had somewhere, they weren't homeless. They had somewhere where they could go and live, but they were recognized as prisoners, and so they were looked down upon. And this was like the late 1800s to early 1900s. So, I learned about that. And then that character has a child, and that child wants to explore and get out of Alabama. So I'm sorry, Pratt City is in Alabama, and she wants to get out of Alabama. So she migrates to Harlem, New York. And so from Harlem, we talk about like the jazz, and we get into uh, like the civil rights. And so Marcus Garvey is mentioned, Duke Ellington, and this is in no kind of order, and Billie Holiday. And they talk about the Underground Railroad in this book. And we go through like the 80s, the Coke, war, or I don't know, like the Coke scene, and drugs and meth and methadone clinics, and just how this lineage just goes through a different type of roughing it than the lineage that stayed in Africa, that was in Africa. And they, both of the families suffer, and both of the families have good times and they have bad times. They're different but similar. And so what comes together is the last two characters, Marjorie and Marcus. They end up, with some of the same qualities that they have from each family, right? So Marcus is a descendant of Esai, and the Esai is the one who stayed with the mother. And then Marjorie is the descendant of Afia. Afia is the one who was sent away, and each one has traits from the other family. So you can tell that they're related. They have fears of like their ancestors. They hear things. It's very well done. I completely rate this book a 5. If I could give it more stars because I went over the 5 level, then I would. But my scale is 1 to 5. So I definitely rate this book a 5, and I highly, highly recommend it to you. I enjoyed reading it. Like I said, I was sad when it ended. I learned things. I traveled through the book. It was amazing. It was so amazing. Very well done. Very well done. And if you know anybody that would benefit from this video or any of my videos, my reviews, please share the videos. Let the people know, give me a like and a subscribe. I am part of the DigiKast, one half of the DigiKast, and I love to read. If you have any suggestions, any books that you think that I would enjoy, or something that you would like to hear me discuss, talk about, please send it my way. I am Sherry's Joy on Blue Sky. I am Bookmarked SJ on Instagram. The DigiKast, you can find us on Spotify, Facebook, Instagram. We're going to have an email coming out soon. You can view our blog at TheDigiKast.substack.com. We have awesome content. We do things, vacation on a budget. I've got the DC Chocolate Festival video coming out soon, or if it's out before this, check it out. Check it out either way. So thank you so much for sticking with me and supporting me. It means so much to me. And I know I'm not looking you directly in the eye. I am recording this myself. So I just want to make sure that I'm bringing good content. Thank you again. I appreciate it. Love the world.